On my honor, I will never betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself. Welcome to episode number 62 of the On the Blue Line podcast. We call this Monday Morning Roll Call, and I am the host and founder, Wayne Mulder. This week, a kind word or deed. The Monday Morning Roll Call starts now. So we're going to switch up a little bit of what we do on the Monday morning roll calls. When we first started, and I kind of alluded to it in the last couple weeks, we always had a news component. And we talked about positive police news and so forth. Well, we're expanding on that a little bit. So I will warn you, if you're listening to this in podcast format and not watching the video, that it is a little bit longer than normal. And if you're watching the video, then you'll be able to see the little split up segments as well, which that video is available on our YouTube channel at On the Blue Line. So this week for Monday Morning Roll Call, I want to start with a little bit of news. Going first to Florida, I want to give you an update. We all remember the tragedy that occurred at the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. Well, they just came out this week, and this is from the Miami Herald, that the Broward Sheriff's Office has determined that the sergeant, who was the first supervisor to respond to the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, had lost his job after they found out that he hid behind his car when those first shots rang out, that he was going to get his full back pay and get back his seniority. It looks like this situation was challenged by the union, and the union, they came out through an arbitration ruling that the BSO violated Sergeant Brian Miller's constitutional due process rights and improperly terminated him. Though in this article, they don't go into a lot of detail as to why he was terminated in the first place. They state that he was one of four other officers who were fired under the neglect of duty, but they don't go into a lot of specifics as to what those potential constitutional due process rights and why they may have, quote-unquote, improperly terminated him. They do go on to say that he was the first supervisor to respond to the scene, according to the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission, and that when he arrived, shots were being fired, and he hid behind his police cruiser and did not radio in for 10 minutes. So obviously that played a part, allegedly, into why the embattled sheriff had let him go in the first place. Of course, a lot of those terminations and so forth were challenged. And, of course, Israel, who was the then sheriff, was removed from his post by the governor. And it looks like some of this is continuing to spiral because the union leader has also recently been suspended. And they have been accusing him of corrupt practices, conduct on becoming an employee, and so forth and so on. So stay tuned. I'm sure there's going to be more news on that, but at least for now that this sergeant, who had been fired in due to his response to this event, has since been reinstated. The second issue that I want to talk with you about is this whole HEROES Act. A lot of people are talking about this HEROES Act that they talked about on Friday, and that they had picked up in the House of Representatives. Here's the thing, and I'd had a couple people bring it up to me, and at first you're like, well, this isn't law enforcement related, why are we talking about it? Well, the reason I wanted to bring it up is because they use the name HEROES Act, and yet that is what it has very little to do with. It's actually just a huge package amounting to about $3 trillion in quote-unquote relief, which we all know it is more of it has little to do with stimulating the economy and has a lot to do with more special interest and so forth. The HEROES name that it has gotten actually comes from the acronym. So it's called the Health and Economic Recovery Omnibus Emergency Solutions, and hence the name HEROES. It's got your typical economic impact payments and a lot of pork in this 1,800-page document, which I will put a link to in the show notes. However, a couple things that I did want to bring your attention to is there is a hazard pay section of it, but it is a small section of it that would provide to essential workers a $13 per hour pay premium on top of their regular pay for all hours worked in essential industries through the end of 2020, and up to $25,000 for essential workers earning less than $200,000 and up to $5,000 for workers earning more than $200,000 per year. So it sounds good if it wasn't part of a $3 trillion package that, again, I'm a big believer, and I've said it before, we should have one bill, one vote, one bill, one vote, instead of putting all these things together. And I think we can fairly say that this is not going to pass the Senate, or nor will the president sign off on it. But I just want you to be aware of it being out there. It is interesting when you get into essential work. It involves regular, this is their definition out of the 1,800-page document, regular in-person interactions with or the regular physical handling of items by patients, public, coworkers, and can include all the above. Emergency response, health and residential care in inpatient or outpatient settings, pharmacy services, social services, behavioral health services, physical therapy, on and on it goes with those. Work performed in a medical testing or diagnostic facility, certain biomedical and clinical research, child care, grocery, including similar retail, restaurant work. It can get into food production, warehouse work such as distribution, storage, call center support, sanitation work, news gathering and dissemination. Yes, even the men and women half wearing their mask at the White House who can't provide an accurate story to save their lives, they are considered essential. But anyway, I go on. Educational services, mortuary services, and other work deemed essential by a state, local, or tribal government. But anyway, I think, thankfully, this silliness is not going to pass. I know we will probably see some portion of it. One section of it is 190802, which deals with the death and disability benefits for public safety officers. Now that, I think, is good. And the good news is that the Senate picked this up as well. So we don't need to pass that silliness to get it. We just need the House and the President to sign this bill. This one, which is not nearly as pork-filled as that one, is called Safeguarding America's First Responders Act. And this pretty much would create a temporary presumption that COVID-19 is a work-related injury, ensuring that families of first responders who die from the disease will receive line-of-duty death benefits through the Public Safety Officers Benefits Program. So this is actually a really good act that is getting bipartisan support. In fact, Senator Chuck Grassley, he stated, "Today's vote sends a loud and clear message to America's public safety officers. We appreciate your steadfast dedication in the most trying times, and we're here to help if the unthinkable happens. Losing a first responder in the line of duty is always devastating. Families of those lost to COVID-19 shouldn't face an uphill struggle to access financial support promised to them." And he goes on and says, "This bipartisan bill recognizes the unique challenges posed by this pandemic and better ensures that public safety officers' families can quickly access financial help." So it was actually co-authored by Senator Cory Booker. So great job on that, guys. And the fact that it's bipartisan and the fact that it actually looks like it has a chance and it doesn't cost $3 trillion, I think that's something good that we can talk about in today's news. So, all right, the last of the news stories that I wanted to talk about this week is out of the Port of Seattle. This you've probably seen a little bit about. In fact, this officer was actually on the Glenn Beck program this last week, and he's been on a couple other programs talking about what happened. So the headlines out of the Seattle Times states that a Port of Seattle places cop on leave after viral video discouraging enforcement of state's anti-coronavirus measures. Like everything, this is very fact-specific. Officer Greg Anderson said he's on leave pending an investigation, and he went on that on May 7th, he was in uniform sitting in his patrol vehicle and says that citing or arresting people in relation to what he called tyrannical social distancing orders violates people's constitutional rights. And here's a quote that he had put in that video, which I put the video in our show notes, so definitely watch it. It's about 8 minutes long, and it's pretty good. And he says, "I want to remind you that regardless of where you stand on the coronavirus, we don't have the authority to do those things to people just because a mayor or a governor tells you otherwise." He says, "We don't get to violate people's constitutional rights because somebody in our chain of command tells us otherwise." And he goes on to say how he has concerns with getting with people traveling on roadways, people surfing, opening up for business, going to church, things that honestly should concern all of us a little bit. Here's the thing. When you read on, it appears that Mr. Anderson did not get in trouble for putting the video out there. Now, he insinuated in some of his, because I listened to him on the Glenn Beck program the other day and on Blaze TV, and he said that his command staff was okay with it initially, and then as it went viral, they became less okay with it. I don't know if that's accurate. It's out of Seattle. It is Washington. Anything is possible up there. However, when you read the statement put out by the police chief, Rod Covey, it says, Greg, this is a quote, Greg has always had the ability to express his opinions on what is going on in the country like all other Americans. However, he is not allowed to do so while on duty, wearing our uniform, wearing our badge, and while driving our patrol car. Every police officer in the country understands that. I personally told this to Greg and told him that I would support his right to talk about these issues as long as he did so while not claiming any affiliation to our police department. Greg has chosen this course of action after he and I spoke and while also knowing that his actions were outside of well-established policy. So this is an important distinction, and I can say firsthand that these rules exist, and there is a social media policy. That's why this program has nothing to do with any agency. You will note that I am never and have never been in any sort of uniform if you watch the videos. And I say very little about what I actually do. And that's all intentional, because you will find that most agencies in this country, especially your larger ones, have social media policies. And some of them are more restrictive than others, but they have policies that typically cover at a minimum that you can't say things in uniform unless it's sanctioned by the actual sheriff's office or police department. So they may have special things. Maybe they're pushing stuff out to Facebook and so forth themselves, and they have a YouTube channel, and they will have you on behalf of that organization speaking. But to just do it on your own, right or wrong, you can't do it. You can't put it out on social media, and I think for the most part, most law enforcement officers understand that. So that seems to be the problem here. Now, I will say that he's not wrong. Greg Anderson, I watched his video, and I will say, Officer Anderson, that you were not incorrect, at least in my opinion, which again is my sole opinion, which the numerous small print things that I put on the website and everything else says that it is my sole opinion. You're not wrong. However, clearly it went viral, and he's got they have some donation pages out there that are raising some funds, and he got some feedback. Some people stated that discipline is warranted. Others applauded his, quote, heroism. Others called him an idiot. I can say from doing this, you will get the entire spectrum anytime you put anything out to social media, so none of that is surprising. And of course, he is out of Washington, so up in that area, in the Seattle area, there's been some other pushback to some of the governor's orders and things that have gone out. But we have already spoken in previous episodes on my opinion on all that when it comes to social distancing and when it comes to making sure that our constitutional rights and the constitutional rights of people are protected. But this is kind of like what I talked about in that same video, is that we're not necessarily talking about that, whether or not what he said was right or wrong. It comes down to an issue of whether or not he followed an agency policy. And if you didn't follow the agency policy, then you kind of ended up where you ended up by making the decision that you made. And again, if you're good with it, that's okay. But then you also know that you may suffer the repercussions. So just be aware of that. All right. So real quick, I want to take a break and talk about something that I haven't done before. If you've been listening to this for any time, you know that the only things that I've ever advertised or spoken about on this show, on this podcast, on our videos have all been products that we have here at On the Blue Line. And by the way, we do have some that we are working on and more that will be on the way shortly. But this week, I want to tell you about something that is absolutely amazing: whiskey coffee. And need I say more? Is there really anything else I have to discuss when you say those two words together, whiskey and coffee? So my friends over at Campfire Hour, or the campfireblend.com is where you want to go. They have come up with a woody, full-bodied, medium dark roast of coffee, but they age it in a Bozeman Spirits Distillery 1889 whiskey barrel. So they take these whiskey barrels, and that's where they age this coffee. And I can tell you that this is a product that I was personally using. It's a product that I personally purchased, and it is absolutely delicious. So I want to tell you about it. I definitely encourage you to check it out. I want you to go to campfireblend.com, campfireblend.com. And if you use the offer code BLUELINE at checkout, you're going to get 10% off your first order, and they will know that you like this show, and I think that would be wonderful. So campfireblend.com and use the offer code BLUELINE at checkout. And of course, it's in the show notes if you forget. All right, so this week I want to, in our positive police news segment, do something. There was an article, and this was actually from policeone.com, where he had gone through and shown that this previous week, the one that just ended yesterday, being Sunday, was Police Week, and it was different, right? Like, because of social distancing, because of a lot of the policies in place, you didn't go down to the local courthouse. You didn't go down to we didn't have the large get-together in Washington, D.C. You didn't have a lot of the memorial services that come this time of year every year. We didn't have them. And we didn't have them because of the pandemic, because of what's going on. So what this writer for Police One had found is he went through and started looking up different things that had used hashtag 2020, hashtag Police Week 2020, and hashtag Police Week, and specifically on Twitter, and really found a lot of different great things that were put out there in support of law enforcement. So I just want to show you a few of them real quick in this segment. And it says here, this is from Santa to Seniors, and they are here to help you in your time of need. Thank you to all the nurses and police officers as we celebrate their week, and Nurses Day 2020 and Police Week 2020 from Santa to Seniors. This was from the FBI San Diego, and they talk about the National Police Week, and they have, of course, the Remember the Fallen, and they have a wreath there, FBI San Diego, we will never forget. Acting Secretary Chad Wolf, he had put out, proud to have virtually run this year's NPW 5K alongside leaders from across DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and put out a video which talks about the National Police Week 5K, which was ran virtually. Definitely something to check out. The Home Depot Government Relations Department, they had put out, grateful to partner with our local law enforcement agencies to get more done. And the Justice Department, thank you to the brave men and women in uniform who put everything on the line to protect us. During Police Week 2020, we recognize the officers we have lost and extend our deepest condolences to their loved ones. This was just from a Miss Shayla Joy. Decided to light the porch up for United by Light for National Police Week. Thank you to all who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for holding the line, blue or gray. And if you haven't taken a look at the images here, which you definitely want to check out, she has her front porch of the house bright blue. PF Chief Robeldo wrote that when Jaylene found out, this young child, that it was National Police Week, she decided to surprise and honor her daddy with a blue ribbon and a big thank you. So put a blue ribbon around the tree and some blue flowers up under it, and had put those out to Twitter. The Mount Juliet Police, in 2019, 146 families were torn after their loved ones gave their life in service to communities across this nation. This week is National Police Week 2020, and the headquarters, along with our town center clock tower, will shine blue in honor of these heroic policemen and women. So definitely another one you're going to want to check out, these neat videos of the town being turned blue. Stephanie had put out that her son, who's a law enforcement supporter, had asked to make a mask for him. And she said this was her first sewing project, and she made him a blue line mask. Pretty neat. And, of course, he took a photo of himself in front of the blue line flag. The NASDAQ had put out on their large billboard that they observed Police Week 2020. And the Chicago Police had talked about their memorial and giving 6,000 meals to Chicago police officers citywide this week. Chief Jim Gilbert, he had put out a photo. There's a photo of him there standing at attention, and said he's honoring the fallen this week. The Windsor Regional Hospital had done a caravan of police cruisers and pretty much police on parade in honor and in celebration. The National Law Enforcement Memorial had the candlelight vigil that I spoke about last week and told you about. Somebody named Mark Danbeck, he pretty much did a workout of the day where they did 51 reps of this exercise and 51 sprints to honor the 51 fallen South Carolina state troopers that have died in the line of duty. FBI Las Vegas, they had a virtual memorial service reflecting those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. I love this one. This is the St. Pete Police. I love them all, but this one's really good. This little St. Pete Police right here in Florida. A 6-year-old is in the window of the vehicle here with a sign that says thank you and showing it to each of these law enforcement officers as they drive by. Very cool. Attorney General Barr, who is becoming much more well-known right now with Obamagate going on. But anyway, the Attorney General Barr had made remarks in reference to the annual candlelight vigil. And then Senator Roy Blunt, in recognition of Police Week 2020, I spoke to the Senate floor to honor 3 Missouri law enforcement officers who lost their lives this year in the line of duty. And then last but not least, this Chief David Catholdi, it never ceases to amaze me, the talented people who have working here. And they handcrafted these neat signs and frames that they could put the patches from the Monroe County law enforcement into. So, very neat. Check those out. It was this week's Positive Police News segment. All right, so now for the something to think about. Let me tell you a couple quick stories. So, this week, kind of an odd thing. I've got, as you know, if you're following our Taylor and Takari Instagram page, we have 2 dogs here at On the Blue Line, and they're both Tibetan Mastiffs, and they're both girls. So earlier in the week, I had this random white pit bull show up, and he was lost and looking for his owner. And, of course, he was very interested in our 2 girls. But fortunately, he left. Well, the next day, the little escape artist had gotten out again. This time, they couldn't find him, and of course the owner ended up coming back to our house to say, hey, can you help me out? Of course, when you have a large billboard known as a police vehicle sitting in the front of the house, you also get people coming up to your house and saying, hey, can you help me? So that's not uncommon. But they came up to the house and said, hey, is there anything you can do? Well, it just so happened that I'd been flipping through the Nextdoor app and had gotten a notification that I saw the dog. And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is your dog. So I was able to put out on social media, hey, this dog had gotten out. If anyone has any information, can you try to get me with who has the dog? Because I'm now with the owner and I'd like to pair these 2 up because they'll be happy when I get the dog and the owner back together. Well, one of the statements, and the end of that story is, the good news is I was able to work that out and get the dog and owner together, and all was good in the world. But while all this was going on, I've had somebody get on the Nextdoor app and put out there this crazy statement, and pretty much says, it amazes me how irresponsible people are. Please don't dump your animals anywhere. Some shelters are no kill. I understand dogs can get out, but please leash them. Now, mind you, I don't know who this person is. I don't know why this person felt they needed to say something. And if you were going to say something, you should probably be able to be somewhat helpful in one way or another. She was none of the above. And I get, people shouldn't dump their animals, so forth, but that wasn't what this was. It was clear in what I posted and clear in what the other person posted that, hey, this guy's dog got out, and I'm trying to get the dog and the owner back together. And she felt that she needed to put something out that was completely unhelpful to just about everybody. Now, this same week, I ended up not feeling well. I was under the weather, and for the first time ever, I had to cancel an interview with a guest. And the good news is that we've rescheduled and that interview is still going to happen because I am looking forward to sitting down with him. He's an amazing guy, and I really think that you're going to love that interview. Well, when I sent him the email, he sent me back just a short email and just said, hey, I understand, no problem. Every time I talk to this guy, something positive, something kind comes from him. When we had a Facebook get-together in this Military Creator Con group that I'm a part of that I've spoke about before, every time he talks, all I want to do is say amen. because he's that guy. He's that guy who always has something positive to say, something that is always helpful to say. He's just a kind person. He always has a word of encouragement, something uplifting. Whether you follow him on social media, whether you talk to him in email, whether you're canceling an appointment that you had scheduled for 2 weeks because now you're not feeling well, he has a way of uplifting you, of making you feel better. And that's really what I want to kind of bring to you as the thought for this week. We don't realize how big of a deal it is to just sometimes be kind, to just say nice things to people, to just say things that will make a difference in their life. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be that big of a thing, right? We're not talking about like changing the world here. We're talking about just moments of kindness and how those moments of kindness can make a difference in the lives of those around us. So that's what I want to encourage you on this week as part of our something to think about. So, we are in interesting, unknown, and uncharted times. For some, these are even scary times. We have had some governmental officials at almost all levels throwing the Constitution out the window and trying to create a police state and using law enforcement to accomplish these ends, just like what we saw from Officer Anderson talking about. But thankfully, not only are law enforcement officers such as Greg Anderson coming out and saying, don't forget your oath, don't forget what we have to do. Courts, such as what happened this week in Wisconsin, are overturning some of these draconian measures. And now some local officials are coming out and saying, we will not use law enforcement to enforce these ordinances anymore. And members of the public, they're standing up and saying, we're not going to live like this anymore. And they are doing what Americans do. They're going back to work. They're trying to open their small businesses. And they're remembering that in this country, for as long as she is a country, we the people control it, not the government. So I will say that as I prepared for this episode and went over the numerous Twitter posts and social media posts honoring and thanking law enforcement from all sorts of sources, my heart was overjoyed. In fact, I'll admit it, I almost teared up a little bit. This is America, and for all her faults, it is her people that truly make her great. We have seen it this year more than any other time in our lifetime, how easily freedom and liberty can be challenged and taken away. But seeing the response from everyday Americans, from everyday officers, and from everyday people who have taken the oath to defend the Constitution, I'm encouraged. As National Police Week concludes and Memorial Day is a week away, we will remember each and every day this month another of those great groups of people who have sacrificed so much to make this constitutional republic what it's become. We are truly blessed to have the freedoms that these men and women have fought so hard to ensure. May we not simply legislate them away with sweeping legislation intent on ushering in socialism. May we not simply give them away in the spirit of fear that has gripped this country. But may we rather remember their sacrifice and fight each and every day to protect the Constitution that ensures these rights. And also be kind with people and make a difference in the lives of others. Brothers and sisters, stay safe out there. That does it for this week's Monday Morning Roll Call. I hope to see you next Monday at Roll Call. And in the meantime, I will see you on the Blue Line.